Greg Williams for the defense. Could you tell us your name, please, sir?
Second.
Could you tell us your name, please?
Okay. Richard Cipriano, I'm a psychologist licensed in the state of Florida. Cipriano.
And did you interview Jonchuck Jr. this morning?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what caused you to conduct that interview?
I received a court order from the judge to do a competency evaluation on Mr. Jonchuck.
And did you do that, have you just recently completed that evaluation?
Yes.
And could you tell us what your opinion is regarding Mr. Jonchuck's competence to proceed?
He's competent to proceed.
No other questions, sir?
Any questions from the state?
No, Judge.
Okay. Defense, are you stipulating pursuant to Dr. Foreman and Dr. Cipriano that he's competent to stand trial?
Judge, we can't stipulate that he's competent. We will stipulate that the court can make your ruling based upon the reports of Dr. Foreman and Dr. Cipriano.
Okay. You want to say anything, Mr. Bowen?
Well, if that's the case, before Your Honor makes a ruling, I would ask Dr. Cipriano if he could just put on the record the facts and details
That's
upon
a good
which he's
idea.
making his opinion.
You want to question him about that?
I think that he could just put on the record why he's formed his opinion in the 6 criteria without necessarily be questioning him. I think he could do that.
Can
on
you
his own.
tell us pursuant to the 6 competency criteria? Do you have those?
Yes.
Okay. If you could tell us, go through each criteria and any information that you would customarily give. Thank you.
I had asked him what he was charged with. He told me first-degree murder. I asked him if he could explain the allegation. He told me that it was alleged that he killed his daughter, Phoebe. I asked how that happened. He said how she passed. He said drowning. And then I asked him how did they connect him to the crime. He said a cop saw me do it. I'd asked him then the possible penalties. He told me life in prison or not guilty by reason of insanity, and that the death penalty had been taken off the table. I asked him then about the adversarial nature of the proceedings, in particular what the role of the judge was, and he told me act as a referee, keep order in the court, supposed to be neutral. I then asked him about the role of the defense attorney. He said to defend me and to protect me from the state side. And I asked him what he meant by that. He told me to have doctors do evaluations. I then asked him the role of the prosecutor. He said get a conviction and work with the defense in some areas in the court, in particular as far as working at a plea deal. That was my understanding. I asked him to provide the definition for the terms not guilty. He told me there was no conviction. Guilty meant that the person did it. No contest. You throw yourself at the mercy of the court, and it's usually accepted as a guilty plea. Not guilty by reason of insanity, he described as at the time of the crime he didn't know right from wrong. On further inquiry, I asked, is that for any particular reason? He said due to mental illness. I then asked him about a plea bargain. He says that the state and the defense works out for lesser time. And I asked if he had to plea a certain way, and he was a little bit vague on that. So, but eventually,
What was he vague on?
I asked him what a plea bargain was, and he told me that the state and defense work out and give you lesser time. And I asked him, well, you know, in a bargain or a deal, there has to be some reciprocity in there, and he told me that. He eventually said he'd have to give up a guilty deal, essentially, is what he said. I asked him to describe the term evidence. He said video camera, someone that saw you, if you had anything in your pocket or your vehicle. Then asked him about what a witness was, and it's somebody who can take what you say and use it to do good or bad, essentially. And asked him what a jury was. He said they're registered voters. 12 jurors are needed for, in his case, of course, it's a grand jury case. And they come up with a verdict. That's pretty much it as far as...
Appropriate courtroom decorum?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
He does
Yes.
have the ability to do that?
Yes.
Testify relevantly if he so chose?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any additional questions? Anything, Mr. Williams?
Doctor, before you began your evaluation, were you able to review a videotape of a court appearance yesterday where defense counsel advised the court of the areas that the defense team was concerned with Mr. Jonchuck's statements and...
Yes.
Okay. And you had an opportunity to hear that entire court appearance?
Yes, it was quick, and I did my best to write down the notes.
Did Mr. Jonchuck, in your evaluation, did he tell you about each and every one of those?
I can't say that he did because, as I said, it was. I looked at the video, I wrote as quickly as I could, and then I asked what I could recall.
Okay. As to Mr. Jonchuck's belief that he heard things in court on Monday, did he tell you anything about hearing things in court on Monday when there was no court in session?
I can't say specifically. As I said, I was presented with the video. And as far as Monday, Tuesday, I know that was mentioned in there, but I didn't query him on that.
Okay. There was also an indication that Mr. Jonchuck heard one of the defense experts testify about Dr. Emily Lazaro. Did Mr. Jonchuck tell you anything about that?
I didn't inquire. I did mention something about Emily, and he told me it was Dr. Lazaro. And it's to pinpoint what he said and what I can't really answer that question.
Okay. Did he tell you about any hallucinations that he had back at the beginning of the trial involving Dr. Lazaro?
I recall from the video that apparently he looked at Dr. Lazaro and I'm not sure if he made I think he said, "You have a nice night," I think is what he said. And she kind of smirked at him. And I asked, was that "have a nice night"? Was that being cordial or not, or otherwise? And he said otherwise.
And that was in regards to something he said happened here in the courtroom?
That's correct.
Okay. And did he relate to you any events that happened in the jail regarding Dr. Lazaro?
Yes, he said that he's in a one-man cell and that he heard a voice outside the cell which he identified as Dr. Lazaro, and that person had made comments, I think something to the effect about, if I may.
Sure.
He told me initially it was directed at himself and his daughter, and then subsequent later on he said it was just at him, but said something to the effect, "You're going to burn in hell if you don't die." That was what he has told me that Dr. Lazaro said, and then subsequent to that he was informed by his counsel that Dr. Lazaro, it wasn't Dr. Lazaro because she wasn't in the area, So he does state that he did hear that statement by somebody.
Did you also ask him questions regarding jurors that were chosen and on the jury panel in this trial?
Yes, I did.
In the defense presentation to the court yesterday, there was a suggestion that Mr. Jonchuck had said that he had heard the jurors say that that this was not an NGRI plea, and therefore they were not going to listen to the defense experts. And also, the defense team was concerned that he had made a statement that two of the jurors and specifically had said he better believe in redemption. Did Mr. Jonchuck testify about both of those two things to you?
Yes.
And can you relate to us what he said about the jurors not believing in an NGRI plea?
Let me just, if I can just have a moment to search through my notes here. Okay. I'm going to have to, on that one with the NGI, I can't seem to find my notes on that particular one, but on the other one with the two jurors, I asked him if he could tell me where they were seated and if they were white males or females or what have you. And he told me they were white males and they were seated in the back row on the last two on the left.
Okay.
And we went over that. And so he was pretty adamant about that.
All right. And as to the NGRI plea, your notes do not reflect
I'm not finding
if he said or anything
I know
on
we
that?
talked about it, but
Okay. No further questions, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bowen, do you have any further questions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Counsel, you ready for me to make my findings?
May we have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, may we ask the court for a recess so we can talk a little bit before the court makes its ruling?
No, because the jury's coming back in at 1 o'clock. Okay, anything further? I mean, I'll give you 5 minutes, but I'm not going to recess. If you have anything you need to put on the record right at 1 o'clock, that's fine.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, so pursuant to Dr. Corman's oral testimony yesterday, when she examined Mr. Jonchuck in the back, her finding him competent to stand trial, and then defense counsel asked me to appoint another expert, and Dr. Cipriano was next on the list after Dr. McLean, and she couldn't do it because she was hired by the defense as a confidential expert that's seen him rather recently. Pursuant to Dr. Cipriano's testimony that he's competent as to all 6 statutory criteria, I will find him competent to stand trial. The undisputed testimony from the two experts is that he is competent to stand trial. Anybody require anything further right now? I'll do an order to such effect, and we'll start the trial at 1. And I believe Dr. Otto will be on the stand, and Ms. Manuel will do her further direct. Is that correct?
We haven't really had lunch. Can we have a little bit more than one?
How much do you need?
1:15?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Judge.
I agree.
Well, and can Dr. Cipriano be excused? We don't,
Yes.
he's done, right?
Right?
Correct.
Okay, Dr. Cipriano, you're excused. Thank you
Thank you.
very much for stepping up to the plate there,
Okay, thank you.
okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of like the emergency room. Got to do it now. Thank you.
All right. We'll be in recess till 1:15 for the courtroom call.